Hello. I'm just trying to get my camera positioned right. Oops. Okay, needs to be a bit higher. Looks like all right. Looks all right to me now. Going to move my paints a bit and see if the alignment on this is all right or yep, looks okay. Okay, so I'm going to tape my page. What are we doing today? We are going to paint something like this. I mean, this is a fall scenery, and the inspiration was from that I used for this picture, or the reference was a photo that a friend of mine clicked. Archana clicked some lovely photographs of Canadian weather, different weather, whether it's fall or snow, or winter, spring. Her photos are really inspiring. They make for great subjects to try landscape painting. So I have often taken her fall photographs as references for my own paintings, and they are really so colorful. The magic of the colors of fall, it just translates so beautifully on paper. And I've done a few of these, and I thought she's been asking me to do a live uh, on one of using one of her references, and I thought that made sense. So here we are. This is one that I did recently, not too long ago, probably a day or two back. Hi Rutu. So let me just show you Archana's page on Instagram. So this is Archana's page on Instagram, where you can actually check out all her posts. They're just beautiful images, beautiful pictures of nature. So I went through a lot of these. For example, this one. Can you see this is the reference I used for this painting, and it turned out quite nice. I mean, you have to remember that it is only a reference. We are not aiming to copy an image as is or replicate an image as is. It is just a reference. You have to build off it and add or subtract what you think is best, keeping in mind your medium, and also keeping in mind that the you know so you have some liberties, right? As an artist, you have certain liberties that you can take and you should take, because here you are under no pressure to recreate as is. So yes, to answer your question, Ritu, we are going to do another lovely scene I found among her pictures. Let me see if I can locate it. This one. So if you want to check out this reference image, please go to Archana's Insta handle. It's Ara Snapshots. And if you scroll through her posts, you are going to be able to find this image. It's among many other fall images too, but I just liked this one. It had a lovely layout, and I've been playing around with shadows a bit, so I wanted to cover one which had shadows. So check this out on Instagram. You can use that as your reference if you are painting along. But I'm going to keep this at the side and look at this while I paint today's piece. So first things first, let me just set up my paper. I'm using 100% cotton 300 GSM cold pressed watercolor paper. This is A5 size, plus or minus. I never get the right sizes in these loose sheets. They say A5, but it's usually a little off. But you get the rough idea that it's half of an A4. Size wise, not very big. But you can also do this on a very large sheet. You can do it on an A3, an A4, whatever you're comfortable with. Start small, it just gives you more confidence, and then you can always go larger. Okay, let me set up my image at the side over here. I'm going to keep this at the side simply because I mean, I don't have space for everything on the screen here, but if you are looking at the image, it'll help. Okay, you can just follow this image. I'm going to keep it at the side, you won't see it now. All right, first things first, let me tape down. Now, I did not tape down for a lot of my paintings. I don't tape down because very often I'm just trying out something and I don't expect it to be successful. I also am doing it on a whim, you know. So what happens is on a whim, you almost, you know, you don't plan for anything. So I don't end up taping down my sheet. I don't bother with all that because I don't expect that the outcome will be great. And then when it does turn out not so bad, I have a painting that has no clear borders or clean lines, which is fine. But for now, I'm going to put in this border, make it neat, presentable. But this is entirely optional, and whatever tape you're using, I'm using a painter's tape, they call it. A lot of our carpenters use this when they're applying or fixing laminate onto cupboards and wooden surfaces. I find that this tape is really good. It often creates no trouble coming off, but you have to be careful. You have to have tried this out on your paper before you apply. So I have tried on this paper before, and I know it's not going to tear. Sometimes the paper can get compromised, so you will be removing this at the end, and you will unwittingly also end up tearing the sheet. So very important to try all your experiments before you decide to paint that masterpiece. Okay, getting on to brushes, I'm just using a size 8. I needed, basically what I wanted was a large brush. I needed a small brush. This is a 2. All right, this is a 2, this is an 8, and I also like very often to use a rigger brush. Now, in a lot of landscapes, the rigger brush is so handy to draw branches of trees in a nice organic manner. So I have this fine liner brush. If you don't have one, this is a worthwhile investment. One of any brand will do, but it really does help in landscapes particularly. It also helps in other things, but very helpful brush. So these are the 3 brushes I'm using, largely because my paper size is small. If your paper size is large, you may need a larger brush. So keep those things in mind. As far as paints are concerned, I would have used my Hardy Camlin watercolor set, but I need deeper colors for this painting, right? So if you notice the earlier paintings, there's a lot of rich color here. Pigment used rather dark, aside from the washes, that is. So I decided to use my my full pans. This is the Cornet Sonem, I guess student or artist grade, I'm not sure. It's just pans. The whole point is that because they're in pans, I get a lot more pigment out of it than cakes. So that's why I'm using it. You can use any colors really. Okay, and then I am going to use a pencil. First off, this is just to mark out areas so I know what goes where, right? So in this case, okay, in my picture, somewhere below half mark, this is about half mark, and I'm going to go a little lower than that. We have a horizon line which is not straight, and so no tension, just free hand somewhere below your half mark, not really below, not very close, but definitely below it. You have to mark off this horizon line, and don't worry, it doesn't have to be straight. And then you have this road, so you're going to mark off and be very light about your markings, because watercolor, as we know, is transparent, rather transparent. So you don't want these pencil markings showing through your paint. Okay, then we have a very focal set of trees, one here, one here, one here. So let's just put in some placeholder lines. Okay, so this is one placeholder line I'm going to put, which is the lamp post. Okay, there is a lamp here, and then there is one lamp behind, which is similar in style, and then trees. So we have a lot of trees. We can draw this tree on the left. On the left we have a tree here. So let's just draw a line. Okay, and for foliage, what I'd like to do is just squiggly lines, very light. This just gives me an idea where my foliage would lie. So I'm just very squiggly, kind of demarcating these borders. Then I have a tree over here, which seems to have some foliage this way. All right, broad at the base and sparse at the top. Then I have okay, there are some trees in the back over here as well, but it's almost blending into the back foliage there. Let's go on to the trees on this side. So I would say something like okay, it's my tree is slanting a bit, and that's fine. Actually, it could slant a bit. I'm just correcting that a bit, but yeah, that should be it. Okay, so there's one tree here, and that foliage begins somewhere here. Squiggly lines. All of this is going to go under paint, so we are going to, it's okay to have a few squiggly lines here. Then there's a tree at the back right here, which is going to share foliage. And then there is one more tree here and one behind it, and you get the drift, right? Keep it light. Now here is a tree whose branch we do not, whose main bark we do not see, but its foliage sticks out well into the picture, and it goes way into the skyline as well. So let's just draw these lines to indicate where those marks would be. And then you have the background. So the background is going to be a bunch of blurry lines, curvy lines. And what we notice here is that all your trees end at roughly this height, and then you have tree stumps that are visible, which are just whitish lines. So we're going to leave that as it is. We are going to put in those stumps, okay, at a later point, but let's just leave it there. Now, once we have this basic sketch, it helps us know where to place our colors. Okay, going on to the part where we wet the sky. So the sky is a very pretty sky. I'm going to be using, on the camera it might look almost blue green or a bright blue, which is like a cerulean blue, but I will go for a mix of ultramarine blue, which is usually the color we use for sky, and cerulean blue. just to make it a little brighter. Otherwise, sometimes the sky just looks a dull blue, right? So I'm going to mix two colors and get the sky in place. But don't worry about the way the clouds are formed. We can't always imitate it because watercolor is going to spread rather funny on wet paper and we cannot control it. So don't aim to control it such that your skies turn out exactly the same way as this. The other thing that I would like you to notice is that we have slight hints of gray, okay, just to show a difference between white clouds and slightly grayer clouds, more like shadows, not rain clouds. So keep your gray ready, okay? We're going to keep a gray ready, we're going to keep a blue ready, and then we're going to wet this page, okay? So first layer in any painting is what we call the wash layer. The wash layer sets the tone, okay? It's your, essentially it is having your classroom ready for class, right? If you don't have your benches in the right place, where is everyone going to sit? So the wash takes care of that. Here's my ultramarine blue with a little bit of cerulean. So cerulean brings in that little bit of greenish tinge which ultramarine doesn't have. And this is a wash consistency, very watery, okay? I'm going to keep this ready because we're going to need this for the entire sky. Next color we need is a gray, which I'm going to make, which is usually again ultramarine blue, wash consistency, ultramarine blue with burnt umber or any brown for that matter. I don't say that it should be a particular brown. Different browns will give you different hues, but I like this gray. It has a bluish brownish tinge, and that's it. Okay, again we need a watery consistency because you can't have gray clouds. You just have a shadow of a cloud. So really watery, and keep it that way, ready for use. Okay, now on to wetting the page. Wetting the page, you need clean water. This is important because sometimes I have made the mistake of using nice green water and putting it down on the page, and then green skies. That's another story. So I'm going to wet the sky area, not dripping wet, but wet enough for color to spread on it. So gleaming a little bit, glistening a little bit, not more. Not like a big puddle all over your sheet. Okay, we just want the page to be wet. And till which point do I wet it? I wet it only till this horizon line because there is no sky after that, right? And even the horizon line, we don't have the sky all the way down. So we are going to have to lighten our blue as we come closer to the trees. And now we start with the blue that we've prepared. Don't take a very big amount. It will just spread because remember your page is wet. Take just a little bit initially. You have to figure out what is going to happen. Now the color is not going to spread the way you want. So don't bother controlling too much. Yes, place it at the right places, but don't worry if it spreads beyond what you would like it, where you would like it to go. This is bound to happen. This is just not something you should worry about. So I'm going to put in a little color here, and you will notice that my water here has already started to dry. Everything depends. There's so many factors that affect clouds, the painting of clouds, because your paper, your paint, even where you are painting. For example, I'm painting in Kerala right now, and it's really hot right now at the moment. So humidity is low, paper's drying super fast. Not something I like, but can we control it? No. We have to work with what we have. But where possible, try and avoid these kind of harsh lines. I mean, it's not always avoidable. where avoidable. So I'm going to put in a dot here. And now by now my paper is starting to go from moist to damp to moist. I think that's the, so it isn't spreading as well as it was spreading the first time around. That's good. Okay, now we go on to the grays, and we have to move fast because, like I said, my paper is starting to dry. Let me re-wet the little portions. The ends are becoming dry. So most of it is going to happen right here at this end. I dip into the gray, but only the tip of my brush, only the tip. And I put in a little bit at the base of what I think is a cloud. Okay, so base areas of a cloud. So the white portion is the cloud, and so keep that in mind when you are putting in your grays. Very, very light wash consistency, and a large part of it is only around this area. So you will notice this part of the sky is still quite bright. I don't want to put too many grays there. If I do, just a dab, not more. Okay, so let these grays do their thing. I can make this a little bit brighter, just a wee bit, just for a little shape. Spreading is a lot less. And this also brings in a little deeper color. Sometimes what happens is all your blue looks the same. So some portions need to be a little darker, and this works. The second touch works. Okay. I'm going to leave this. Okay. I'm not going to worry about the sky too much more. Leave it to settle down. Next, we are going to go on to the base, which is basically a green color, but we have a road as well. So I'm going to use a gray on the road and a greenish yellow, mind you, a greenish yellow, especially the top part. So we're going to have two colors, but what we're going to first do is imagine there is no shadow and just paint as if there is no shadow. So first I will have this road, which is the same gray that we used for the clouds. Since we have enough of it, let's just start with the road. Okay, wash gray with a little bit of darker hues here and there, but those will just blend, and really you won't be able to see them as separate things really. Okay, then we are going to get on to green. Now what I like to do for this green, I always do use sap green, because fall green, the first layer of fall green is usually very bright green. It's that yellow going to green. It's not a dull green. So I would use a base yellow first. So in this case, instead of using your lemon yellow or gamboge or any of those colors, I like to use this color called yellow ochre. Okay, it has an earthy tone to it, and it kind of dulls your green down too, so I don't get a very fluorescent looking green. So yellow ochre with a little bit of sap green will be a lovely green that we can use for the ground. Next thing I do, which I don't know, I just picked it up along the way, I think, and it served me well. I just take a little bit of yellow and I kind of put a base coat. Okay, and this is can be lemon yellow, can be gamboge, probably lemon yellow is better. And then after I've put that first bit, then I start putting in the green. Okay, it blends very well because yellow is wet. So you have this yellowish green look, and the green that I prepared just blends in quite well. Okay, so you have a yellowish look, you have a greenish look, and then go ahead and start putting more sap green. Everything while it's wet, because then the blending is really good, right? So sap green. And now as we go lower, we can bring in hooker's green. I like hooker's green, so I kind of mix a little bit of hooker's green. It's a deeper shade of green. along with my sap green and just kind of use off. Wet paint blends with wet paint very well. So if you're doing this like in a gradient style, make sure that you do it while the previous color is still very much wet. Okay, so that's my, okay. At this point, don't worry about the patchiness or how it looks. The base is the base, right? You don't have to worry. Everything goes on top of this, and how you place everything on top of this matters. Okay, now what we really need to do is we have to wait. It's a waiting game. Yeah, because you have to be patient. If I start putting color in this portion, some part of this sky may still be moist. So you have to check, be careful, check. So here is wet and I have some dry portion here. So let me start with the part that's dry. Okay. Our tree on the left. Okay. Actually, if you look at the colors here, the lightest color is yellow, and we need to put some yellow in here. Even at the tips of these trees, a little bit of yellow. After yellow comes the orange. You can put in hints of orange, followed by maybe this red. And then we can go into the trees' green colors. There are some lighter greens, and then there's a dark green, and then finally browns. So it's a delicate play of many colors. You have to really be intuitive as you put in colors. Okay, let's start with yellow. I will go on to my smaller brush now. Since the washes are over and we go on to the second layer of color, I will go on to start using my number 2 brush. Now I'm going to take a color that's yellow, could be a gamboge mixed with lemon yellow or just a gamboge, as is your choice. I will start with the yellow trees. And mind you, I am not going into drawing leaves individually. No chance. We are not going to be able to draw leaves of trees individually. It's all dashes with the brush, like just bob your brush around. This can be a little overwhelming initially, I have to admit, because even I used to watch people paint and then worry, how do they move their brush? How does it look like a leaf? It comes quicker than you think, is all I can say. So you try this and you will be surprised that by the time you probably paint a third or fourth picture, you kind of have got the hang of dabbing your brush to get a leaf-like look. The reason we dab it and not slide the brush as if we were painting fully is because we want these white spaces in between, right? You want to be able to see gaps. You want to be able to see the sky sometimes other leaves. So those gaps are very important. We don't paint them in whole. Okay. All right, so we got these trees in. Now there is some lighter yellow here, so I'm going to just leave it for now. The base of all these trees is also yellow, so I'm going to put in dashes everywhere. Dashes and blobs of little yellow. Going higher into the trees here. Now, another thing you must remember, if you feel that you have put yellow at places that don't have a yellow, don't worry. The next darker color is going to easily come in, and if you feel that yellow wasn't supposed to be there, that dark color will replace that yellow. So don't worry too much if you are worried that your yellow has gone to places that should not be yellow. Unless, of course, it is blue and sky, and you definitely don't want yellow in a part of the sky there's no tree in, right? So that, yes, you have to be careful. But other than that, if you're within the confines of an actual tree, really no problem. Okay, I'm treading dangerously there, so I will go on to this side. Now, tops of these trees have a little bit of yellow, so I'm only going to do the tops. Have you noticed that the pencil markings that we made are kind of going under the trees? under the lines that we drew for the trees. So that's the best part. So you don't have to worry. By the time more foliage comes in, the pencil markings will all be under it. But you need to be mindful when you're putting those pencil markings. Okay, just to make sure that you don't have a, imagine if you've drawn this in an area where there is no lamp. Now there's no way I can remove this pencil marking after paint has gone on top of it. So be aware, but don't worry too much if you have more or less got it. Okay, side of this tree is done enough, has enough yellow for me at the moment. So I'm going to go on to this side where I hopefully am not going to move into wet paint. This is something you really have to check on, otherwise you're in for a disastrous experience. And it has happened to me. You really have to be patient. Very often we think, no, it's fine, what's going to happen? What's the worst that could happen? The worst is really the worst. Your blue and yellow mixing up and the sky is messed up. Just be a little patient. Wait for the thing to dry. Okay, so there's a little bit of yellow on this part. I'm being very. Some yellow on the body of the tree. And some at the base over here. Not the base, but somewhere in the middle. I see some yellow here. And a bit over here, but this is not going to get seen much. Ah, yes, this tree has a little bit of yellow sticking out. So I noticed that these green trees at the edge, they have yellows only at the tips. Strange, no? It's like as if the yellows. Oh, probably the yellow is what comes after the green, right? So the new leaves have the yellow. Not sure what it is, but anyway, in the photo, we have yellow at the tips. Okay, this yellow is done. I'm going to move on to, surprisingly, I'm going to move on to a little lemon yellow. Why a lemon yellow? Because I've noticed that there is a little bit of light yellow here, and I'd like it to look a little light. Same way I noticed a little bit of lemon yellow here. Honestly, you may not be able to see this difference when I'm showing it to you on as I paint. It's very likely you won't see much difference. Okay, on to, let's see if this portion is dried. Okay, the bottom has dried. So what I'm going to do is, before I get into more foliage, I am going to go and put in the shadow. So remember the shadow? The trees have cast a lot of shadow over here. We're going to get that shadow in by getting our gray ready. Which gray? The gray that we created earlier with brown and ultramarine blue. That gray. Okay. It does not have to be dark. It is still a wash gray. Wash meaning more water, very less pigment. Okay. Because this gray, even though the shadow has come in, the green has been maintained. You'll notice, right? The green is still green and the gray road is still gray. So you're not going to be able to see that if you apply a very dark gray on top. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead with this. Brief and long strokes. Leave some gaps because trees cast shadows that way. Start from the end. Reach the other end. Don't brush too much. I mean, in the sense, don't rub your brush very hard on the surface. Try to keep your brush strokes minimal. I'll tell you why. Because there's a layer of paint underneath, right? You're painting on top of a layer. If you're going to rub it hard, it is going to come off. And your green is going to go into the road. And then it's just problematic, right? So don't brush an area too hard too many times. Just move past it. If you feel, as I feel right now, that the road is not, or the shadow is not dark enough, and I feel it's not dark enough, don't do anything right now. what you have to do is wait. Let this dry. After it dries, it's fully dry, you can come back and put another coat and it'll look nice. But if I right now try and get a darker shade and then apply it quickly on top, you are definitely going to move the green into the gray and the green from here in gray into the green, and it's just a mess. Okay, so don't disturb anything right now. Let it stay. We can add the darker shade later if we want. Okay, on to the next lighter shade, which is, and my small brush, which is number 2, and let's get on to orange. Orange color in my palette is rather bright, so to dull it down, like bright in the sense, I guess you could have it bright because the picture shows it to be a very bright orange. You can dull it down with a little bit of yellow ochre or a little bit of light brown, whichever you have in your palette. I see. I think, yeah, I need to dull it down. So I'll just dab in a little brown, wet it, make sure that it is nice and light, and then dab one more time. Have you noticed that these colors are usually distributed more in one area and less in other areas? Keep that in mind when you are dabbing your brush. Don't cover the entire yellow that we put in there, simply because if we cover everything we painted, then there was really no point painting it, right? So the whole point is we are painting on top of a light color, but we want to retain some part of that light color and only cover the parts that are absolutely need to be dark. Okay. Oh, Esther, that's so lovely. Your daughter's really small, so it's nice to know that she's watching keenly. Now I'm going to move into this area, and I see that there is a little bit of orangish brown shade over here. Actually, this tree is bright red, okay? But I don't want to go bright red just so that I don't want it to look very stark. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to act like a base layer for me, okay? A base orange, and then on top of that, I'm going to add reddish hue, but after it's dried, not now. Now what else? I suppose we can put in a little orange on this side, on the right side. Okay, so there is a little bit of scope for orange here. You can see some here. Now this part doesn't matter. Like I said, the reference is a guide. It is not something that has to be set in stone. So if you feel you want to put orange where there is no orange in the reference, please go ahead and put it. Do not hesitate. Next, now I'm done with the oranges that I wanted. I will now go on to the green. Now the green I want is a dull green. Okay, so I have something here that looks like an olive green. I'm going to take olive green, but if you don't have olive green, you can take sap green, mix it with a little bit of light brown or maybe even yellow ochre. You will get that olivish look. Again, not thick paint. It's a very watery paint. Okay, and here we're going to add in some contrast at the base of these yellow trees because they are not entirely yellow. I can see a greenish hue here and there. Okay, not entirely yellow, so let's just keep that. Some parts are light darker, some parts are lighter, but there is a greenish hue at places. This is not shadow, this is the actual leaf. So just so you know, the tree is not entirely yellow. The tree has green bits to it. So we are not yet at the point where we are creating shadows to these trees. Next, I have to get onto the greens here. So the greens here on these trees are at the base of these yellow stems. And now you can be a little more liberal in how you spread them because now the tree is going to get filled up, right? So we're not hesitating here now. You're definitely within the safe zone all of this is going to be colored in some color or the other. So don't be afraid to put some green down. But the dots and dashes are so important. You just need to. That tree is coming up, isn't it? Finally takes shape. It's the darker shades that bring out all the goodness. So I'm actually going and filling in the body of the tree as well, because what's the harm? That color is going to be there in the base and there is no harm. Even if we put a dark green on top of it, it'll just make that dark green look even darker. So there's no harm in having a lighter green below it, filling up the tree space. Okay, now on to this part. While you're dabbing, you can dip your brush into paints that have other greens. So for example, can you see a little bit of a variation? I've tried dipping into sap green. That's because we want this kind of a change in color, because naturally a tree is not one color, right? A tree can't be all olive and then all green at one point and all sap green and all. So mix it up a bit. Dip into different types of paints that you have ready. So that's another thing I would recommend. If you're using 2-3 types of green, keep those greens ready on your palette. I mean, like, keep them moist and ready to use. Hi Archana, nice to see you here. We are using one of your lovely pictures as reference today, so I'm very happy you could make it. Must be awfully early for you. And don't worry, I'm going to save this live, so you'll find it. You'll find in time, when you do these kind of sceneries, you'll find that it's very therapeutic. Sometimes painting foliage can be very therapeutic. Okay, I'm going to drop in a bit of bright green just to jazz it up. Okay, how does my tree take some shape over here? So this is another thing you have to pay attention to. How does it look? Where is it going? My tree seems to have branches this way and then sideways. You can't get every single branch in. You can get the idea that there is a branch out there. That's it. All of these are just an idea, a hint. The lighter shades are usually, like I said, like I noticed and I told you, the lighter shades are usually on the top of a section, and the darker shades are, so like for example, yellow is always found above green, and so on. So your dark green will sit at the base of a light green, things like that. So this tree comes right down to this point. I'm like now liberally just applying greens. Okay, so don't worry too much. Just want a rough idea. So this tree kind of sits here and there's no real bark that we can see. And that's fine. Next we go on to the tree in the middle. I need to get my paint mixed up, a little more paint. Going a little brighter with this. Now this tree actually is quite green. So let me just go all out with the green, not hesitate. The next thing we're going to do after this tree is over is we are going to add the branches, because the branches have to be added at some point a little early, because you can't really see all of the bark and the branch. You can only see some parts of it sticking out, and so you have to kind of bring it in before you add the darker foliage. So if you understand what I mean. Anyway, you can watch and see what happens. You'll figure. All right, so what do we have here? Yeah, we have the first 2 layers of color that we wanted. Now, what I'm going to do next is the brown. I take a shade of something like burnt umber, and to it I will add a little bit of just a hint of black, just to darken it, because burnt umber sometimes can be a little bright. And it's okay if it's a little bright, don't worry too much. I'm coming to the side. I'm not going to this side because it's wet, and if I put in any bit of brown, it's just going to blend with the green, and then you know what I mean about a mess. So here's the part where I put in the branch of this tree. And I can make it a little bit wobbly and things like that. That makes the tree look nicer. Okay, now this branch, you can see parts of it here and then parts of it here, and at this point I see a turn. These kind of things are nice to include right away, because they have to hide between the leaves at some point. You see them, but at the same time you don't see them, kind of. So put them in right now, and then you have a general idea where to put your darker leaves. Okay, so this is another tree here. At the base of all these trees, you seem to have a little bit of a angle, some kind of a, it's wide, right, at the base, so keep that also in mind. Now the pole, I'm not, we could just draw it, just the first layer of the pole. Okay, I am very careful about this because it has got to be thin and delicate, and I don't want it to be messed up. But basically that pole is going to get darker. On to other things now. We're going to, now as the trees get further away, they get lighter. So I'm not going to go past this point, okay? I'm going to be very careful not to go past this point. Trees bark is a little thicker as you come closer, obviously. Put in a little bit here, and this is where you have to be careful. Be careful. Why? Because you could still be, paint could still be wet. Okay. All right. Now this tree, like I said, has no main branch that we can clearly see, but you may be able to call in, imagine, or in the dark shades kind of see the branches that hold these leaves. So it's very important to give a sense of something of a backbone, right? These leaves are not just suspended there. There is some branch. So I just put these kind of marks and that's it. I don't bother beyond that. All right. Now on to, oh, we forgot something, and this is a big miss. Okay. Not to worry. We can probably come back to it later, or shall we just leave it this way? Maybe we leave it this way, okay? Because I should have actually darkened my shadows a bit before I put the tree stumps. So now I'm late. And I probably shouldn't do anything. Leave it. Leave it. But we will take a little bit of gray and we will put in just the edge. Okay. We also have a patch where there is some kind of a darker shade. I think it's like water has seeped onto the road. Okay. And that you can definitely catch. You can definitely paint. And the road is damp, and that dampness, you can capture that effect with a darker gray. So that's what I'm doing. Press down your brush, give it a very random looking, mark. This is not even a brush stroke, it's just a mark of something that has wet the ground. The other thing you can do is, after you dip your brush in paint, dab it back on a tissue. Okay, basically you're drying the brush, taking off the water, but a little bit of pigment still remains, so you can drag it down and get this kind of a very rough grainy look. And that is it's called dry brush technique, and it has its own charm, whatever you might say. I like this dry brush technique. Okay, next. Let's get on to the dark greens. I will be using Hooker's green, which is a deeper shade than olive, not olive, yeah, I guess olive and sap green. Okay, so Hooker's green is not available in all palettes. You can use maybe an emerald and put in a little brown, or any darker green and put in a little brown just to get that darker shade. So let's start with this tree at the edge. Okay, now you have to be very tactful where you're putting the darker green. The darker green cannot cover up all of the lighter green because we want the lighter green, right? So be very careful. Every layer we put on top, the layer below, something has to remain of the layer below to show the difference, the contrast, things like that. So keep that in mind and don't apply dark green all over the light green. Okay, this part I may be covering everything because there is no light green at this point. Okay, so I'm okay with this part getting fully dark, but I have some dark going in here, a little extension here. Now these little branches which I did not color last time, I have to bring them out because I can see them and I'd like to keep them in the picture. Okay, then you have let's take this tree. Okay, center of the tree, obviously a lot of it is going to be dark, so you can, if you feel like you're more confident trying the center, getting the bulk of the paint into the center, do that, that's fine. But when you're doing the edges, remember you have to have less pigment, less paint in your brush, otherwise it's just going to blob, one big blob is going to fall there, and then you're just going to feel bad about it. The edge doesn't, it's got to be small strokes at the edge and not a big blob of paint. Okay, now these trees in the foreground, in the front, are darker than the trees in the background. That's something you have to keep in mind. So foreground trees are usually, things in the foreground are usually darker. Things in the background, they start to fade from our vision, so they tend to be lighter. This is like a just physics, I think, not even a real art rule. It's how the eye works. Okay, all right, getting on to oh, look at the time, it's already almost an hour. Getting onto the big tree. Now the big tree, I'm just going in a tad deeper with my blue, my green. Someone's decided to switch on music in Kerala. All of you who've been to Kerala and know how music works, public music works, will know that the loudspeakers can come on anytime. It's not just Kerala, but yeah, in Kerala, they serenade you. So this part of the tree is going to be darker, the inner part. So you can put in your clumps of dark paint here. And like I said, move outward more cautiously. Okay, with smaller strokes. There you go. Soundtrack of a different type. I was wondering what music to put. Okay, what I can do at this point is I can also introduce a little bit of brown. Now, why would I do that? Because it's basically a variety, right? You can see that all leaves are not necessarily green, or mix the brown with the green so that you get a darker shade of green, right? See? Contrast is very, very important, and more than anything, organicness about the tree itself, right? You don't have a tree that has only one color. All the green is just one shade of green. No, that doesn't happen. Oops. All right. Some darkness here. Be very gentle with these little bursts of stems that stick out, kind of branches that stick out. Be very, very gentle with those. I'm going to go in with my dark shade here. These little dots, they indicate the leaves are at the end. So remember that. It's nice to have those. Okay, now the contrast here has come out quite well as here, but on camera it probably looks better than it looks to me. To me, the contrast is still a little light. So I will go in later with some dark shades. But what I'm going to do here now is get that red in. Remember that red which I wanted to cover over this orange, right? So I'm going to put in that red now. I'm going to go in with a little bit of bright red, but very, very gently. Your number 2 brush has to be only the tip of the number 2, nothing else. It's very, very important. If you press down the brush, you're going to get a big blob, and then that delicateness of that tree on its leaves is not going to come out very well. Here you can be a little more liberal because it's a big bit of red, right? Again, all this is subject to how you want to interpret it. I interpret this as a big blob of red. If you want to consider it not so big, change it. It's your painting at the end of the day, right? Okay, same way I want to put in a little bit of red here because I see a darker portion here. And a wee bit here just for, yeah, I think it will bring in some contrast. Yeah. Okay, now we go on to, what do we go on to? Yeah. So this is the part where I had not reached even last time, so I wasn't sure how to address it, but let me see if I can do it with my fine liner brush, okay? Because I don't trust my number 2 brush to be very fine. I'm going to take green, the same, what green was it? It was Hooker's green. And I'm going to put in some brown and a little bit of black and make it really dark. Now, why am I doing this? Because I want to bring out these areas under the under the tree. Between two trees, there's a lot of green, but it's not green, it's almost blackish green. Okay. So I'm being particular and I'm just kind of filling up the gap with that green, blackish green. But when I put in that green, I make sure that I leave the stump of the tree to be seen. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of a negative painting thing. So it does look like there is something there, some branches, some stems, but at the same time, I'm not sure. It's just indicating something to me, right? Same way here. So it may help to just put those stump markings in place before you fill up the gaps in between. And when you're filling the gaps, fill the gaps nice and organically. Do not have them all look the same height, same, basically my point is it's all foliage. What's in between those trees is foliage. So it has to appear a little bit mixed up. So I'm going to even put a little bit of red because I see a little bit of orangish red here. And then more trees. So I come back to my green and drew my lines. There's a tree there. There's a tree here. Between them, I keep dabbing my brush so that I get that. So can you start to see this tree formation? Okay, my paint is running out. More green, more brown, more black. I constantly struggle with preparing adequate paint. It's a real botheration, but you have to learn. It takes time. Let the green go a little bit into the trees to indicate that it is it's taking up all the space in between. All right. You can continue this, but as you reach the ends, the sides, you can get lighter with the green. So you can bring in a little bit of sap green. And you can start to get a little lighter. This side gets lighter, I noticed. So you can consider putting in a little bit of sap green and getting this part lighter. But the other side I noticed is still dark. Again, still mark those bits, because if you don't mark them, you really are not going to remember to keep the branches. Sorry, stems. Why am I calling them branches? They're like the barks of trees, the actual tree bark. Over here, I notice a little bit of brownish, reddish, orangish. I forget what color it is. Can't make out what color it is, quite far away. So I'm just going to dab in that color there, because why should it all be green? It's not green. Right. So I'm going to introduce that color. Yeah. Okay. So we're done with that part. Now we're getting on to this part. Now this part, unlike the other side, is actually quite dark, almost black, almost jet black. So I'm going to put in a little bit of black and my green. Again, I need to mark my trees. There's one here, slightly angular. Put in all these little details because it may not look like much, but eventually once those trees come in, it really does make a difference. And be careful when you're doing the negative painting. If you do this absent-mindedly, you will color the wrong place. And then, not the end of anything, but then you'll have to probably use a gel pen or a white gel pen or some color to indicate. There you go. All right. Now for the even darker parts. So two things. One is I have to add in dark, almost blackish green over here. I need to also put in a few dots of those dark greens elsewhere. So let me just use the same green. Okay, this may be the best way to do it. The same green, I'm going to kind of find spots in between to place them. Okay, so this way. Okay, so what happens is it makes it look like, yes, there are gaps and there's green showing out of these trees. Okay, seems like okay to me. You know what, I'm not very happy with the greens over here, so just for contrast I'm going to put in a watery bit of green over here, just a bit, because the yellow trees are looking very yellow. Okay, yep, now on to this green that we were talking about. Okay, before the green, let's just get to that brown. The tree trunk is now looking too light brown, and that's not good enough for us right now. We have to get it darker. So dark brown, and while your dark brown is in, you can even bring in some black. Okay, I know this looks dark, but if you blend it in while the brown is wet, you're going to find it's fine. Blend it so that that black doesn't stay black. The other option is you can take your black, mix it with a little dark brown, and keep that color ready. So then you don't worry about mixing a brown while the black is wet, or the black while the brown is wet, and things like that. So, okay. Same way, I'm going to darken this one. On one side, you will notice that one side is always a little darker than the other. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So it's like a shadow kind of, shadow sort of a thing. Okay, now this tree here definitely has a dark patch. And so does the one behind it. Okay, the lamp is almost jet black, almost, but I will not, I will mix brown and black to get that color. I don't want it to be jet black. Jet black stands out very stark. I wouldn't advise using black as is. Mix brown and black and you should be okay. My rigor is very, very good for this. Like I said, even a size 2 point does not do enough justice to the fine lines as a rigor does. Use the same dark shade to also draw one lamp here that we did not draw earlier. I mean, we did not draw with a brown earlier. So use that. Yeah. Okay. These trees can become brown. And the trees at the back, which are looking a little stark whitish now, take a light, maybe something like a yellow ochre, and just mark in those bits. Okay, so they don't look stark white. They are light trees, light branches, but they are not white. So just make sure that they don't look white. Okay, one part done. Now on to the darkest of darks, which is basically almost black and hooker's green. And I'm going to use my rigger now because rigger also gives me a very good brush stroke, very similar to what leaves look. Orange trees, Ritu, orange trees were actually initially, I had used orange plus burnt umber, kind of mixed it and got my shade. because orange is too bright. Then uske baad I used scarlet. Again, scarlet mixed into that same mix, you know, so that's why the scarlet is not looking bright. A lot of these colors need to be toned down because our palettes may be a little too bright for a natural looking foliage color. You know, foliage in the even the brightest of foliage is not it's not fluorescent, and it's not so bright that, you know, it's not very often not the color that we find in our palettes as is. So I like dulling it down with browns and things like that. Gives it a nice shade, the shade that we want. Okay, I'm getting on to this very tricky thing to find the balance of where to put your dark shades. Very tricky, because sometimes, you know, sometimes you feel, yeah, it looks nice, and then you end up putting it, and then you feel it's too much. Don't overthink it. Having said that, don't overthink it. Just keep doing. But watch, keep stepping back. That's important. You know, sometimes we don't step back, and then we end up getting too dark portions that we don't want so dark. Okay, so here a bit. All right, so that is fine. I'm going on to a little bit of this. I even like to put here just to get that. Yeah, onto this tree. Now this tree doesn't have as much dark shades as I would have I have made for the other tree. What I would do is take the same shade that I created, water it down a bit, and then put in here. Okay, so you get it dark, but it's not going to, eventually when it dries, it won't be as dark as the tree we just colored. But always at the base of certain branches that you can see, because this is not at the tip. Inner part of this tree definitely has more dark shades than the outer part, meaning the right side of the tree more than the left side of the tree. But it is not extra dark because I watered it down. Okay, just now for this tree, on the other hand, I will have to again ramp up my green and black just so that I get that contrast. In fact, it has some branches that stick out here that are dark, quite dark. Sorry, folks, this has gone way longer than I expected, but you know how it is. Very easy to get carried away when you're painting something really pretty. All right. Few last minute touches because I did not get in all the shades that I wanted in the ground. So I'm going to touch it up a bit with green. Okay, watery green. Now, why have I made it so patchy? Because I want to put in a little bit of yellow. And a little bit of yellow here. Just a streak. All right. Little bit of yellow ochre here at the edges here. You will notice. But immediately followed by green. also brings in that shadow that I could not bring in too well. Okay, so be gentle with this. You are on dangerous territory. Don't brush over any of the trees. There is, if you notice in the picture, at certain points, little bit of green like this. Shadows of other things. So at the base of certain trees and things like that. Please put those in. All right. Yep. That should do it, I think. Again, because I can't abandon it, somehow these things take over, right? I just want to put in a line of it there. There you go. There you go. That's it. That is it. I'm going to stop. Oh, because I can't stop. Sorry. One more, but this is wet, I really can't do it right now. What I would recommend is after it's dry, when it's fully dry, you can put in a blob of paint. Now if I splash paint right now, it's all wet, so it's just not right time to do it. But take a little bit of yellow, ochre and green paint and just dab it over here with your brush. I mean, basically tap your brush, and when you tap it, all those splatters will come up here, and that'll look even better. Okay, do that after the paint has dried. That's it from my end. I'm going to all right. I'm always a little wary. Like I said, I've told things before. There you go. And that's our fall scene. Very different in many ways from the picture we had, but pretty in its own right. Yeah. Thanks for joining me, everyone. This has been fun. I will post these pictures on. In fact, I'm going to put all my fall pictures on Instagram in a post. And thank you, Archana. Your photos are just amazing. I love them. And those of you who would love to, reference Archana's photos, please feel free to reach out to her. Her photos are on IG, but it'll be great if you could let her know if you are using any of them for your work. And yeah, don't stick to the picture. Don't let the picture limit you. Let it allow you to expand. Do your thing under the guidance of the picture. That's it. Thanks, everyone. Catch you in a live later this week, hopefully. Let's see. See you. Bye.